MP to all cars. Armed robbery on security vehicle
Juliet,
now.
4 to MP.
4 men.
Off watch.
Zulu 1 to MP. Disturbance in High Street. Gang of youths
MP
fighting
to
with
Golf
knives.
1-1.
Request assistance, over.
Suspects on
CRD, DC Harrison. Who is that? Yes, he's somewhere around. Will you hold on, please? Dave!
Yeah?
Phone.
Who is it?
Carson, about his scrap metal.
Him. Good morning, Mr. Carson. Sergeant Brook here. What can I do for you? Yeah, we're still working on it. Yes, I know it was a valuable load, but I think you're nearer to the thieves than I am. No, I'm not suggesting anything. OK, Mr. Carson, we'll take a look around together. This evening at 7? Fine.
You seeing him tonight?
Yeah, someone has to. He's getting mad. What's Max up to?
He's typing a report.
Hang about. Busy?
Not much.
What are you working on?
Pieces of 8 and a trip to the Spanish Main.
Come again?
An old sea captain is advertising for adventurous young people to join him on a trip to the Caribbean. And one of the young people thinks it's a con.
Is it a con?
I don't know. Seems he's asking the young adventurers each to trust him with £900. But he doesn't mention money in his advertisement. You can read it.
Sea captain, owner of the schooner Sea Mist, planning to sail to the Caribbean, would like to meet young persons of an adventurous disposition with a view to joining him.
With promise of blue lagoons and dusky maidens frolicking in the sand, topless.
Oh, it's a thought, isn't it?
You could do a lot worse.
Sergeant Brook!
A voice from the real world. Coming, Mr. Roach. Yes, Mr. Roach.
Sit down. Have you spoken to DC Maxton?
Not yet, sir.
Their commander has just told me that Sergeant Miller leaves us on Monday.
It's a bit quick, isn't it, sir?
Well, the commander has agreed it. A transfer to the yard. So we lose an experienced sergeant and I lose my personal help.
But if,
Yeah, what is it, Mary?
You're with the commander in 5 minutes, Mr. Roach.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Now, where were we?
we have a vacancy for a detective sergeant.
Now, I have a vacancy, Dave, for someone to work closely with me. And I want Maxton.
Harrison is top of the frame, sir.
Or on length of service, maybe.
On experience, sir.
Well, Maxton came top in the sergeant's exam.
Well, he's good at exams, but education doesn't catch villains.
Are you knocking him? Or trying to keep me away from him?
No, sir. I won't stand in his way. But if you want someone to take Tommy Miller's place and work closely with you, Harrison...
Dave?
Yes, sir?
As a replacement for Tommy, as someone who can catch villains, how about you? It would be worth a try, wouldn't it? Keeping you close to me?
I'll talk to DC Maxton right away, sir.
That's better.
Max,
Yes?
I want a word with you.
Oh, half a sec. CID, Maxton here. Is it? We're on our way down. There was a sharp while you were with Mr. Roach, Dave. I booked out a car. It's waiting. Jim, we're ready.
Needs 3 of us, does it? What is it? A riot?
I'll tell you in the car. Jim.
Right.
Where are we off to?
Lorimer Crescent. Got the sheet, Jim?
Yeah, somewhere. Here it is. Passed on by uniform. Sounded like a domestic, but it wasn't. Mrs. Brown, householder at 54 Lorimer Crescent, says this morning 2 men forced their way into her house, held her prisoner, started breaking up the place. She's been in tears, hysterical. Like an earthquake has hit her house, she says, and she wants to know why.
And we have to tell her.
No, we have to talk to her, look at the place and find the 2 playboys.
And speed it up, Max.
Okay. You said you wanted a word, Dave?
It can wait. Let's do this one first. Mrs. Brown?
Yes?
We're police officers, ma'am. I believe you've had some trouble.
Come in, please.
Thank you. Where was the trouble, ma'am?
All over the house, in every room. Come and I'll show you.
They did wreck the place, didn't they? Are all the rooms like this?
Upstairs is worse. Mr. Clark's room.
Mr. Clark?
He rents a couple of rooms from me. They asked for him, but he wasn't in.
When was this, Mrs. Brown?
About 10 o'clock this morning. I was in the kitchen when I heard the doorbell. 2 men were there. They asked for Mr. Clark. I said he wasn't in, and one of them took hold of my arm and pushed me inside. They asked where his room was and took me upstairs.
DC Harrison?
Yes, Sergeant.
Mrs. Brown, this is Detective Constable Harrison. He and his colleague, Detective Constable Maxton, will examine the damage in the downstairs room while you and I go up and look at Mr. Clark's room. Is that all right?
Yes.
Jim, you and Max have a good look around, but don't touch.
Yes, Sergeant.
This is Mr. Clark's sitting room, and his bedroom's through there.
Is the other room as bad as this?
They smashed them both up. You can see. Broke the furniture, tore out the carpets. Didn't leave anything that isn't ruined.
Do you know these men?
No.
Tell me how it happened, Mrs. Brown, right from the beginning. You opened the door. 2 strange men asked for Mr. Clark. You said he wasn't in.
And one of them grabbed my arm and pushed me into the hall. The other closed the door. They asked where Mr. Clark's room was.
And you brought them up here?
They dragged me up here. They were hurting me. They were big men, mean and vicious.
It's over now, Mrs. Brown. Don't get upset.
No.
They wanted Mr. Clark's room. Is this the room you took them to first?
Yes, and it made them angry. They said this isn't where he slept and went to the bedroom.
Let's look at it. This is even worse. They didn't do this for fun.
They were looking for something.
Yeah. Did they say what they were looking for?
No, they just went around breaking everything. And they asked about the girl.
The girl?
Mr. Clark's girlfriend, Miss Lewis. They asked if she lived here.
Does she?
No. Well, sometimes, not all the time.
These 2 men, how long were they here?
They didn't leave until 3 o'clock. They were here for 5 hours.
Yeah, it would take about that time. Did they let you move about?
No, they kept me with them. And when they left, they were very angry.
Did you see them leave?
Yes. They threatened me not to say anything and then just walked out.
Did they have a car?
There wasn't one outside the house.
Would you wait here a few minutes, Mrs. Brown? Max?
Yes?
What do you think of it?
Unbelievable. Do we know what they were looking for?
No.
Does she still say 2 men did all this?
Yep. And it looks like they were experts.
I'll say.
They left about 3 o'clock, and she says they had no car parked outside, but it may have been stashed away somewhere else. Talk to the crowd, then knock on doors. Did anyone see 2 men leave the house? Did anyone see them get into a car? Can anyone identify them?
Right.
Jim?
Yes, Sergeant?
Go upstairs and talk to Mrs. Brown. Be gentle with her. It hasn't quite sunk in yet. Get a description of the 2 men and a blow-by-blow of the search. Which one did what? We don't know what Mr. Clark had or has that's worth all this wreckage. I want the background on Mr. Clark and on his girlfriend. What they do, what friends they have, the lot.
Yes, Sergeant.
And Max,
Yes?
if you turn up anything from the crowd, give Jim a hand. The lady might do some remembering if there are 2 of you prompting her. I'll get fingerprints on the way and check with the yard if any other pads have been turned over like this. And I'll see you back at the office.
Right.
Hello, Judy. Surprised?
Dave! How did you know I was here?
I'm a detective. Remember? I know everything.
Who told you?
A little bird in your ward. She said, Nurse Graham is across the road having coffee and donuts.
So, I have to buy you coffee.
I'll get it. Miss, 1 coffee. How are the donuts?
Not the best I've tasted. Not much good for the figure either. Anyway, why were you looking for me? Hey, you're not off, are you?
No, I'm not. Happens I was passing. The little Irish nurse said you were here. Chance to see you.
All right, you've seen me. But do we see each other this evening?
Have I ever stood you up?
Dave Brook, how can you sit there and say that? I've been stood up more times than you've had pints of beer.
But not this time.
Oh, here's your coffee.
Oh, thank you, miss.
Which means that you have nothing more interesting to do.
There's lots more interesting things to do. I have a sea captain offering trips to the sun-drenched beaches of the Caribbean to any young person of an adventurous disposition. Might suit you, eh?
You should try me.
Let's both apply.
Is it genuine?
Who knows, it might be. Can I have one of your donuts?
Ever so.
They're not the greatest, are they?
What else is interesting?
Mr. Carson is worried about a lorry load of lead he's lost. About 10,000 quid's worth. He's anxious to get it back.
Will he ever?
I doubt it. Scrap lead has very few distinguishing marks, except to the vicar from whose church roof it was nicked.
And that's all you're doing?
No. There's a nice, respectable lady who had visitors this morning. 2 large men walked in and wrecked her home, item by item, room by room.
Why?
They were looking for something.
It's a very rough way to look for something.
I think it's going to be a very rough case.
Oh, does that mean that you'll...
No. It's not likely to be sorted out today or tomorrow. Might not be sorted out at all. So, what time do I see you?
Well, I'll be home by 7.
Then we'll say 9?
We'll say 8.
All right, 8. And tell the owner of this place to do something about those rotten donuts.
DC Maxton,
Yes, Mr. Roach?
busy?
I've just returned from an inquiry, sir.
Spare me a moment, will you?
Yes, sir.
What was the inquiry?
The house that was turned over, sir.
Anything to it?
It was very professional, sir. And a bit of a mystery.
Oh?
Why a house in a good-class district should be turned over like that.
Yeah, there was a message from the yard about it. Take a seat.
Thank you, sir.
Where are we? Oh, yeah. For Sergeant Brook from C11. They note his inquiry, but the answer at the moment is negative. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Good. Did Sergeant Brook tell you I wanted to see you?
He said you wanted to talk to me, but this job came up.
How'd you get on with him?
Fine, sir. We get on very well together.
Yeah, I see you did very well in your promotional exam for sergeant.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, very well indeed, lad. Do you feel like stretching your wings?
In what way, sir?
You know Sergeant Miller?
Yes, sir. He works with you.
Used to. He's being transferred to the yard with very good prospects. It leaves a vacancy. Would you like to fill it?
To work with you, sir?
Well, to work where I can keep an eye on your progress, where you might be in line for sergeant next time round. Are you ambitious?
Yes, sir.
What age are you?
24, sir. Soon be 25.
Good. Yeah, it's best to start on the promotion ladder when you're young. And a chance to make detective sergeant at 25 is young. It will be noticed. And there's no saying how high you might go with a start like that.
Thank you, sir. Do I talk to Sergeant Brook about it?
No, just think it over. By yourself. Oh, I see Sergeant Brook has come back. You'd better get on with your work.
Yes, sir.
Oh, and Maxton,
Sir?
ambition is not a bad thing.
No, sir.
You've been with the old man?
Yes.
Did he say anything?
He says there was a message for you from C11. They're interested in your inquiry, but the answer is negative. Mean anything?
Means it was a one-off job. Did you have any luck on the door-to-door?
Yes.
Then let's gather round and see what we know. Jim, let's have you.
OK.
Right, we'll start with you, Max.
I haven't yet sorted my notes.
We'll take them as they come. Did anyone see the two men?
No one in the crowd saw them. They gathered after the first pander arrived. But I found two in the house-to-house who saw the car. Here we are. The woman living at number 14 says she returned from shopping at 11 this morning, and there was a strange car parked in front of her house. She doesn't know much about cars and could only tell me that it had 4 doors. It was coloured green and was rather dirty.
Where is number 14?
Same side, other end of the street. Now comes the next bit of luck. The lady at number 20 saw 2 men get into the car at about 3 o'clock. She says she took a good look at the men because they were both big men in expensive dark suits and they looked like foreigners.
Foreigners?
Cypriots, she thought, or Greeks.
Jim?
Mrs. Brown confirms they were big men, heavy, like wrestlers. She says they wore dark suits, white silk shirts and regimental ties.
Regimental ties could mean nothing at all. You can buy them in any street market, any regiment you fancy. Have you passed the description to the yard?
Yeah.
Did they have any thoughts?
About 60 contenders, they said. But they'll sort them out and send some faces.
OK. Now we figure out what they were looking for, right? What's first? How much do we know about our friend, Mr. Clark? Do we know his age?
A surprise. He's 22. A student at the local tech.
That is a surprise. What else?
Not much. At first, Mrs. Brown thought she knew all about him. A nice, quiet, studious lad who confided in her like she was his mother. But that turned out to be a load of bull, didn't it, Max?
She thought she knew, until we started asking.
6 weeks ago, she put an ad in the local newsagent's window. Clark turned up, a student from the local technical college looking for digs. A well-mannered, good-looking lad, and this was just the place for him. He seemed to be fond of the outdoor life. Well, he has the gear for it, backpack and all the rest.
And the girlfriend?
An attractive girl, Mrs. Brown said. She first appeared about a week after he'd taken the room. Her name is Anna Lewis. She's also a student at the local tech. She's about 19, says Mrs. Brown, and a really nice young girl.
Does she live with him?
Not all the time. Mrs. Brown describes them as 2 friendly, well-mannered young students and quiet about the house.
But not true, is it? All this quiet, well-mannered stuff.
It can't be.
Are they students?
Max is checking.
Does Mrs. Brown expect them to return?
Yes.
Do we think they'll come back? Jim?
No.
Max?
No.
Why not?
Well, just after 6 last night, there was a phone call for Mr. Clark. The phone's in the hall, and Mrs. Brown took it. She thinks the man wanted to meet Clark, but Clark wouldn't have it. Soon after the call, he came downstairs with his pack, and he and his girlfriend left.
Not running off?
That's favourite.
Why?
Because whoever made the call was sending 2 men to turn the place over.
Right. Which brings me to the sharp end of the case. What could they be hiding? A student of 22 and a girl of 19 that's worth wrecking a house to find? Or is it so important that a phone call can scare them and send them on the run? Any ideas?
No.
CID, Detective Sergeant Brook. Yeah, we'll be there. Thanks a lot. That was C11. Photographs of some heavyweight villains are on their way. When they arrive, Max, you'll show them to Mrs. Brown. And while you're with her, ask her if her quiet, well-mannered boarder seemed to be well off, free with his money. Jim, you concentrate on our friend Clark and find him for me. Check all the techs and colleges in town and all the student organisations. Go on, start now.
OK.
When do the photos arrive?
They're on their way.
Feel like a cuppa?
What time is it?
Just 6:30.
No, I haven't got time. I have Mr. Carson to see at 7. If you want me, I'll be in his local with the cream of the scrap trade.
And after that?
At the usual number.
Judy's?
You don't have to shout, eh?
Sorry.
I'll be there just long enough to have a quiet meal, and after that, I'll be here at my desk waiting for your report. Mr. Carson!
Who is it?
Open up and be surprised.
Oh, it's you, Mr. Brook. Come in. You're early, aren't you? 7 o'clock, you said?
Had a bit of time to spare. You don't mind, do you?
Why should I mind?
So, this is your office.
Yeah, where all the high finance is done. I just put the books away and lock up. You said you had your 2 best men on the case.
2 good detectives, Mr. Carson.
But getting nowhere.
Give them time. It's only been a week.
2 weeks.
Yeah, well, 2 weeks. But as soon as they try to sell the lead, we'll know.
Will you now?
You can bet on it.
Like betting on a 3-legged horse.
Now, Mr. Carson. Every man to his job.
And my job is selling scrap. It's a big loss, Mr. Brook. I mean, who can afford to lose 10,000 quid?
It seems you can, judging by the way you keep all your stuff just lying about. I've had a look at your yard. A creaky old corrugated fence, a gate I could have kicked down, a padlock any kid around here could have off in a couple of minutes.
Nah, kids didn't do it, Mr. Brook. Scrap lead is too heavy. It needed planning, that did.
Yeah, and it needed a lorry. And since your lock wasn't broken, it needed a key. Have you had a close look at your friends?
You are a very unsociable man, Mr. Brook.
Well, it's because I'm a cop.
Would you like a drink here before we go?
No, I'll wait.
Which means we're going to the boozer.
Isn't that where you're taking me?
If you'll just get out, I'll lock the door. Yeah, that's it.
And who will that keep out?
Around here, they don't consider account books worth stealing.
But they steal everything else that's lying about.
You're not taking this seriously.
My heart bleeds for you.
And so it should. I pay my rates, you know.
Of course you do, Mr. Carson. And about tuppence of it goes to the police. And for your tuppence, you expect a cordon of us guarding your rusty old fence?
And I don't get it, do I?
No, but you get 3 detectives working on it and hoping for promotion. So let's go along to the pub and look at your mates.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Brown.
I wasn't much help.
There were 2 of the photos you thought might be like them.
No, not really like them.
If I get any others, I'll bring them along. Can we talk about Mr. Clark now? Have you heard from him?
No. He said he'd be away for 2 days.
The girl went with him?
Yes.
Do they often go away in the middle of the week?
It depends on what classes they have.
You still think they'll come back?
Yes.
When they went off, were they carrying anything?
Only what he usually took, his anorak and his rucksack. That's what the other policeman asked.
What other policeman?
The one who came after you'd gone. The inspector and the sergeant.
Policemen? Were they in uniform?
No, in plain clothes like you.
Did they give their names?
Inspector Stevens, he said. And I don't remember the sergeant's name.
Why did they come?
Well, to ask about Mr. Clark and Miss Lewis, about when they left and where they were going. But I don't know where they've gone.
Did they examine the house?
Every room, like Mr. Brook did.
Find anything?
No. They asked if Mr. Clark received any letters. I told them he hadn't.
He had a phone call last night.
Yes, about 6 o'clock.
Did he get many phone calls?
That was the only one he ever had.
The only one?
Yes.
Were you surprised by it?
No, but he was. He came downstairs very slowly.
Was it from a man or a woman?
A man.
What did the man say to you, Mrs. Brown?
He asked if Mr. Clark was in. I said Mr. Clark had a visitor. Well, you see, Miss Lewis had just come in and I didn't know if he wanted a phone call.
Did you ask who was calling?
He said, just tell him it's a friend calling, a friend who's just found out where he's living. If I said that, he'd know who it was.
And he came downstairs very slowly.
He didn't want to talk to this man. He didn't say very much. He didn't want to meet. And hung up. I'm not being much help.
You're being very helpful, Mrs. Brown. Thank you.
Seven 453. Who is that?
It's Max. Is that Judy?
Yes, this is Judy.
Is Dave there?
Hold on. It's Max. You hear?
Let's have it. Yes, Max.
Sorry to bother you, Dave. There's something you should know. I took the photos to Mrs. Brown.
Did she recognise anyone?
No, but listen. Her house has been searched again. 2 lads came this evening. They said they were plainclothesmen. They arrived after we left and went over the place.
Did they find anything?
No.
2 coppers. Did they show warrant cards?
No. One said he was Inspector Stevens. Do we know a Detective Inspector Stevens who would be following in our footsteps?
No. I'll see you back at the office.
Okay.
What was that about?
The lady whose house was turned over has just had it turned over again, but gently this time. Someone wanting to know if the first lot had missed it.
Missed what?
Well, that, my love, is the million-dollar question. 2 students, lad of 22, girl of 19, have something that some very rough people want, and want in a hurry. Can you tell me what it is?
I prefer your old sea captain with his palm-fringed beaches and the trip to the Caribbean.
Why don't we pack all this in and just sail away?
Would you?
Oh, sometimes I'm tempted.
Yes, until the next time the phone rings. Is Max waiting for you?
Max is waiting for promotion. There's a vacancy for a detective sergeant.
And Max will get it?
Mr. Roach fancies him for it?
But you don't.
I didn't say that.
But you think it.
Max is still to prove himself. Now, Jim Harrison, he's put in the time and has all the experience. If Jim got it, it would be good for the service, good for morale.
And you wouldn't lose Max.
Now, that's very naughty.
Don't forget your coffee.
Oh, tell.
I sometimes wonder why you don't make this your canteen. You're in and out often enough, and fast enough, and you get more phone calls here than you do at the station.
I've been wondering, why don't I make it my home?
Say that again.
Make it my home.
Don't you remember?
Tell me.
Because you're waiting until you can afford it, until you're an inspector.
To get married, yes, but I was thinking of something else.
We live together?
I'm fed up being on my own, Judy, and we don't manage to meet that often. When you're free, I'm busy. When I'm free, you're on duty. And when we do meet, I'm called out.
And that's the reason?
Yeah. I want to see you sometimes without interruptions. Like, when I'm called out, I'll be coming back.
You thought it all out?
Yeah.
Have you thought about me? What I'd like?
I'm asking you.
Someday when you're not being called out and when we have time together, we'll talk about it. Right now, I don't know. Why don't you just drink up your coffee?
There. Well, can we talk about it tomorrow?
If you like.
Night, love.
Night, Dave.
Well, Max, anything on those 2 coppers who called on Mrs. Brown? Have we had anything?
Hold it, Dave. They were genuine. Inspector Stevens is with Mr. Roach. He's waiting to see you. Ah, here he comes.
Sergeant Brook!
Yes, Mr. Roach.
Sergeant Brook, meet Detective Inspector Stevens. He's come from the yard with answers to your questions.
About the search at Lorimer Crescent?
Yeah. I'll leave you to it.
Yes, Sergeant. That and some other matters.
I understand you've been to the house. Why, sir?
Like you, Sergeant, to marvel at the thoroughness of the search. Because what Clark and his girlfriend are hiding is worth an awful lot of money. And they've been carrying it around for 2 months. The first real lead we've had was the turning over of their flat and your report with the names.
You know them?
We've never actually caught up with them. 2 students on an educational trip abroad. A bit short of cash, so open for a spot of adventure, a spot of smuggling.
What did they have, sir?
Heroin.
They're into drugs.
We had a tip-off that a couple of students, a boy and his girl, would be coming to the country with a package of the real stuff. But they were a smart pair, and they gave us the slip. But in doing so, they also gave their contact the slip, and found themselves back in London, on their own, with the heroin.
Worth a fortune?
Worth several fortunes.
How much, sir?
Could be £500,000. So they became greedy. It isn't easy to give up £500,000.
No, sir.
So, soon after they got back to London, they disappeared from their digs in South London.
And turned up at Lorimer Crescent with nice Mrs. Brown.
Where they were safe for a time, until their contact and the men who owned the heroin traced them, and called at Lorimer Crescent and took it apart. So we have to move smartly. The drug ring is looking for them, and so are we. How near have you got to them?
Nowhere, sir. We've just started.
Well, for their sake, let's hope we're the first to find them.